Andrew Whitney here. And have you ever thought of using the longer focal length Leica lenses of 65, 90 and 135 millimeters with your Leica 3G camera? And why would you want to? Yes, your Leica 3G has bright line framing corners for the 90mm focal length in its internal viewfinder. But have you ever actually fitted such a lens to the camera? I positioned my 90mm f4 Elmar M lens against the body of my 3G as if it were mounted on it. And when I looked through the viewfinder, this is what I saw. The body of the lens, including what I considered to be a necessary lens hood, protrudes so far into the 90mm frame that the frame itself becomes practically useless for composition. It's partly because the 3G's viewfinder window is positioned almost directly above the lens, where it gives very good framing accuracy with a standard 50mm lens, but it results in this extreme lens body obstruction with this physically much longer lens. You could say that in the 3G, the 90mm bright line corners are best used as preview corners only, which show you what your 90mm composition would be if you did fit such a lens. And if you did fit such a lens, then you'd need to fit a supplementary 90mm viewfinder, such as this Leitz Universal Finder, in the camera body's accessory shoe, in order to get a clear view of your 90mm composition. And having done this, you'd now find that your view through the supplementary viewfinder is rather small, and you've lost the inbuilt Albarda viewfinder's automatic parallax correction. And your rangefinder focusing is also a little less efficient too. And the problem becomes even worse with an even longer lens, such as this Elmar 135. And how can you use this 65mm f3.5 Elmar lens head when it has no focusing barrel and there is no viewfinder for it? A better way to use these lenses with the 3G camera, and in the case of the 65mm lens, the only way, is to attach them to the 3G using a Leitz Visoflex II mirror reflex housing, together with either a Leitz Focusing Bellows II or these Leitz OTZFO and OUAGO helical focusing mounts, as I'll show you in this video. Let's take a look at the parts of such a Visoflex-based system and see how they fit together and work. Let's start with the camera body. Here's my Leica 3G, which I've always previously used with this standard focal length Leitz 50mm f2.8 Elmar lens, and more occasionally with this wide-angle W-Nikkor-C 35mm f3.5 lens. This last lens used with a matching supplementary viewfinder in the camera's accessory shoe. I've covered this Model 3G Leica in detail in another video here on my channel, so I won't go into it in greater detail here, other than to say that it's normally used as a range viewfinder camera with lenses of 50mm focal length and shorter, where it works very well, providing an improved parallax-corrected bright-line Albarda viewfinder and a very precise magnified rangefinder focusing system. Now I'll take this lens and viewfinder off this 3G camera body so I can attach this Visoflex II mirror reflex housing to it instead. So here's the Visoflex II. For almost 50 years, between about the years 1934 and 1983, Leitz made a number of originally named Plute and then Visoflex mirror reflex housings for their successive Leica models, each of which turned the normally range viewfinder Leica body into an SLR or single lens reflex camera. And this Visoflex II, introduced in 1959, is the right one for this 3G. When it was introduced, Leitz was selling both the Leica thread mount 3G camera and also the newer M-bayonet mount M2 and M3 cameras. And so they made different versions of this Visoflex II to suit these two different body types. Thus, Leica thread body mount and Leica M-bayonet body mount, with the front mount of the Visoflex II always having an M-bayonet female mount to take the newer range of M-mount optical components. There are also variations in the shape of the actuator arm, as the shutter release buttons of the LTM and M cameras are in different places. So if you're buying a Visoflex II for your Leica 3G, then make sure you get the right one for both your camera's body mount and also its shutter release button. Whatever you do, don't buy this Visoflex II, which is a much more modern Leitz electronic viewfinder made for a newer Leica digital camera. In this video, we're looking at the original all-mechanical Visoflex II from the late 1950s. Now, in my opinion, this is the simplest, most compact and most elegant of all the Visoflex models. Unlike earlier versions, it can be operated conveniently in the hand, using just an index finger, and it provides just one simple operational procedure, and that is when you press down on the actuator arm, the housing's internal reflex mirror flips up out of the way at the very last moment, just before the camera shutter fires. And that's it. The picture has been taken and the mirror stays in the up position, thus giving you a blacked out viewfinder. And it remains that way until you bring the mirror back down again into the lower viewing position by pressing down on this mirror reset lever at the side, which lowers the mirror whilst retensioning its release spring in readiness for the next firing. Now, Leitz did make a special version of the Visoflex II called the 2A, which featured an automatically returning mirror, but it's rare to find. One option you have is that you can partially depress the actuator arm, perhaps most reliably using a regular cable release, which can be screwed into this very neat side-facing cable release bush. And you can thus pre-release just the mirror, and then you can press down more fully to fire just the camera's shutter. And this could be an advantage if you're concerned about mirror vibration during high magnification work. But typically you'll operate the actuating arm with a single complete press, and the firing action of the Visoflex and the camera's shutter combined is smooth and vibration free. And I've been getting good sharp results with these longer lenses, typically handheld at 125th of a second, just as if I was using the shorter 50 and 35mm lenses directly on the camera body. If you're mounting your Visoflex assembly on a tripod, there are 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch tripod mounting threads underneath, so that the Visoflex can be made to support both the camera body at the back and a lens assembly at the front, rather than have the camera support everything, which could put a strain on the camera's base plate. Now, to attach the Visoflex II to the 3G body involves a bit of a rigmarole. I need to remove the pentaprism finder and then flip the actuator arm back out of the way. Now I can screw the Visoflex II into the 3G body as if it were a lens. And once it's screwed in snugly, I can adjust its horizontal fit on the body using these small adjustment set screws, which allow the Visoflex to spin freely and then be locked in the correct horizontal position. Now that the Visoflex is fitted correctly, I can adjust the underside of the actuator arm's shutter release button plunger so that it clears the top of the camera's shutter release button by about 1mm. And now the mirror release and camera shutter will work together correctly. You only need to perform this setup procedure once when initially fitting the Visoflex to the body, and then it will always be correctly positioned whenever you screw it into the camera. Now I can replace the viewfinder. I have two finders for this Visoflex, the Leitz 90-degree glass pentaprism finder and the Leitz upright or chimney finder. Each of them has an adjustable eyepiece which enables the most accurate viewing onto the screen, and the screen carries a 1mm diameter circle engraved in its centre to assist with eyepiece focusing and to act as a scaling aid if desired during photography. The upright or chimney finder provides the most highly magnified view onto the screen, and it shows the screen image as it actually appears, and that is, with the camera held in the horizontal or landscape position, the screen image appears right way up but laterally reversed, that is, flipped left to right. And if I turn the camera into the vertical or portrait position, then the screen image appears right way round but upside down. So this is a finder which is best used in the horizontal or landscape position only, in which it's great for shooting low-angle shots. And I can also look up into it, once again with the camera held in the horizontal position, and that works okay too, with the screen image appearing once again right way up but laterally reversed. The 90-degree pentaprism finder provides a slightly less highly magnified view of the screen, a 4x magnification compared to the chimney finder's 5x, but it corrects the screen image's inconvenient behaviour whilst providing eye-level viewing from the back of the camera. Viewed through the pentaprism, the screen image appears both right way round and right way up, and it does so in all orientations. and so this pentaprism finder is regarded as this Visoflex's standard finder. Now what about a lens for our Visoflex II? I have 3 lenses here in this kit, being the 65, 90 and 135mm Leitz Elmar lenses, all seen here as lens heads only, and they can all be attached to the Visoflex via either the Leitz Focusing Bellows II or via one or more of these Leitz helical focusing mounts OTZFO and OUAGO, as I'll show you here. Let's start with the shortest lens in this kit, the Leitz Elmar 65mm f3.5. This lens exists primarily as a lens head only, which cannot be fitted directly to any Leica camera. Instead, it can be screwed into the Leitz 16558 stepped adapter ring of the Leitz Bellows II, where it provides viewing and focusing all the way from infinity distance down to just a few centimetres from the subject, where something about the size of a small coin fills the frame. So this is a very versatile arrangement with a very broad focusing range, but because it uses the bellows, it's relatively cumbersome, and the bellows is physically fragile, and typically this particular arrangement is best managed on a tripod. Alternatively, this 65mm Elmar lens head can be attached to the Visoflex II via either of the 2 Leitz helical focusing mounts OTZFO or OUAGO, both of which provide a much more compact and rugged assembly which can be conveniently used in the hand. With the lens head screwed directly into the more compact OUAGO mount, we have viewing and focusing all the way from infinity distance down to about 45 centimetres from the subject, at which point something about the size of an A5 sheet of paper, being half an A4, fills the frame. Alternatively, this 65mm lens head can be screwed directly into the slightly bulkier OTZFO mount, which can extend about 18mm further forward than can the OUAGO mount, and this gives viewing and focusing all the way from infinity distance down to about 20 centimetres from the subject, at which point something about the size of a credit card fills the frame. And so this slightly bulkier OTZFO mount, with its greater extension and resulting improved close focusing capability, is regarded as the default mount for this lens. Notice that with this 65mm lens in use, that in close-up situations we're typically close enough to our subject to be able to manipulate it physically whilst at the same time viewing it through the camera. And this can be handy when shooting still life photos. As you'll see, as the focal length of the lens increases, it has the effect of forcing us further away from our subject. Now let's look at the next longer lens in this kit, the Leitz Elmar 90mm f4. This lens was also made available as a lens head only, but I have it here in the form of a complete M-mount lens, with its lens head being detachable from its focusing barrel, allowing the head to be screwed into either the 16558 stepped adapter ring of the Leitz Bellows II or into the OUAGO helical focusing mount, which was designed especially for it. On the Bellows II, this 90mm lens head gives us viewing and focusing all the way from infinity distance down to about 180mm or 7 inches from our subject. And at this point, in which the distance between our lens and our subject is equal to about twice the focal length of the lens, we have same size or 1-to-1 reproduction of the film, which means that our subject is rendered on the film at the same size as it exists in real life. Photographically speaking, this is quite a large magnification, as usually when we photograph things, they appear much smaller in our negatives than they really are. And so this is a very versatile setup with a very broad focusing range. But once again, it uses the bellows and is thus best handled on a tripod. Alternatively, we can replace the bellows with this lens head's dedicated OUAGO helical focusing mount, and this gives us viewing and focusing all the way from infinity distance down to 1 metre or 3 foot 4 inches from our subject, at which point something about the size of an A4 sheet of paper fills the frame. And so this could be useful for, say, shooting a headshot portrait. Note that this is the same focusing range as given by the complete lens when used directly on the camera body. So this OUAGO mount isn't taking us in any closer, it's simply giving us through the lens operation. And the combination of the very compact lens head and similarly compact OUAGO mount creates the lightest and most compact of all the Visoflex lens assemblies. Finally, let's look at the longest lens in our set, the Leitz Elmar 135mm f4. Once again, I have it here as a complete M-mount lens, which features a detachable lens head, which can be unscrewed from its focusing barrel and then fitted to either the Leitz 16558 stepped adapter ring of the Leitz Bellows II, or to either of the OTZFO or OUAGO helical focusing mounts. However, before fitting this lens head to any of these options, it must first be screwed into a Leitz 16472 support tube, like so. Now, when this lens head in its support tube is screwed into the stepped adapter ring of the Leitz Bellows II, it gives viewing and focusing all the way from infinity distance down to about 30 centimetres from the subject, where something about the size of a matchbox fills the frame. So this is a very versatile arrangement with a very broad focusing range, but once again it uses the bellows and is thus best handled on a tripod. Alternatively, this 135mm lens assembly can be screwed into the more compact OUAGO helical mount, and this enables viewing and focusing from infinity distance down to about 2 metres from the subject, where something about the size of an A3 sheet of paper, being 2 A4 papers joined side by side, fills the frame. Alternatively, this 135mm lens assembly can be screwed into the slightly bulkier OTZFO mount, which extends about 18mm further forward than does the OUAGO mount, and this gives a very good close-up capability, covering a field of about 125 by 190mm at about 800mm shooting distance, and it makes this lens behave like quite a powerful close-up lens. Note that with all three of these lens heads, I can insert one or more Leitz OTZFO extension tubes between the lens head and the helical mount, or at the stepped adapter ring of the bellows, each of which provides an additional 27mm of lens extension, and this will take us in even closer to our subject, but will prevent us from focusing back on more distant objects. So what are the visual effects of using these lenses? Why would you want to use them? As the focal length of our lens increases, its angle of view becomes more narrow, and it magnifies a smaller section of our scene more greatly. This lets us photograph at greater distances and create tighter, more selective compositions, and the longer focal lengths also tend to produce a visual stacking effect in our photos, in which objects tend to be reproduced at relative sizes which are more in keeping with their true size relationship in real life. It's the opposite of what we see in our shorter focal length 50, 35 and wider angle photos, in which nearer and further objects are reproduced at exaggeratedly larger and smaller sizes. And it means that different focal length lenses produce different takes on our subject even before we start using them. I like these longer 90 and 135mm lenses for photographing landscapes and for taking more remotely distant street photos. And I like the 65mm lens for shooting half-length portraits and close-ups. Mind you, photographing with a Visoflex is not the same as using a proper, fully-fledged SLR. You don't have automatic lens focusing. Neither do you have light metering in either the Visoflex housing or in the 3G body. So you need to use a separate light meter or else estimate your exposures. As mentioned, unless you're using a Visoflex II, you won't have an automatically returning mirror, and neither the Leitz Bellows nor the OUAGO or OTZFO helical mounts have distance or depth of field scales. Perhaps most importantly, you don't have automatic lens iris opening and stop down, which you would have on a proper SLR. And it means that when you photograph with the Visoflex, you typically need to firstly open the lens iris to the widest aperture, such as f3.5 or f4, in order to secure the brightest and most critically sharp screen focusing. And then you need to stop the lens iris down to any smaller desired shooting aperture before you take the shot. And this required lens iris opening and closing is something which is typically done for you instantly and automatically by a proper SLR. And one of the repercussions of this is that it makes the Visoflex-based system generally unsuitable for flash photography. In this regard, the 65mm Elmar lens head offers some improvement by means of its unusual aperture preset ring, which lets you preset a desired shooting aperture and then stop down to it quickly from the back of the camera, without having to observe the aperture ring at the lens front whilst you do so. and this makes the shooting process a bit quicker and easier. Furthermore, viewing the ground glass screen of the Visoflex is different to viewing the screen of a digital camera or your smartphone. In the Visoflex, we view an image projected by a high-quality lens as it passes through a small block of finely ground glass. And this is something which is beyond the resolution and fidelity of a pixelated screen. The Visoflex screen image is very fine and lifelike, but it appears slightly duller, less brilliant and less contrasty than an electronic screen, and this may take a little getting used to. And it's important to set the eyepiece of your pentaprism or chimney finder for the sharpest, most accurate view. So there it is, using the Leica 3G with the Leitz Visoflex II, the Leitz Bellows II, the Leitz helical focusing mounts OTZFO and OUAGO, and the longer focal length Leitz Elmar lenses of 65, 90 and 135mm. Why not give it a go? You can buy the bits you need on the second-hand market at surprisingly affordable prices. And you'll find that they give you an interesting new way to see and record things with your Leica 3G camera. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, perhaps from a slightly greater distance than usual.